to continue our discussions, so we go now to penicillin units and formulations. So we have penicillin VK, penicillin B, that is almost 800,000 units by Sandoz. So Sandoz is a company that manufacture also penicillins. And then we have 400,000 units and 200,000 units by Teva and other. We have also preparations of 1.5 million units for the, or 1 million units of penicillin G. Okay, so we have resistance to penicillins and other ß-lactam is due to one of the 4 general mechanisms. So that's why we discuss about inactivations of ß-lactamase. Okay, inactivation of the ß-lactamase enzymes that will going to inactivate the structure, of the penicillins, and modifications of target penicillin binding proteins. So there will be alterations or changes in the target of penicillin binding proteins, and then impaired penetration of drug penicillin binding proteins, wherein the cell membrane becomes impermeable, or impermeable meaning hindi basta-basta maka-penetrate yung mga penicillin binding proteins because of the impermeability of the cell structure or the cell membrane of the bacteria. Okay, and we have the yung antibiotic efflux system, as what we have discussed. When you say efflux, the bacterial cell will going to pump, okay, or extrude, or efflux, or going to exit the antibiotics. Okay, so that is natawag natin na efflux system. So mechanism of resistance, we have penicillin resistance. So we have here the penicillin. So penicillin, ß-lactamase breaks a bond in the ß-lactam ring of penicillin to disable the molecule. So that is one mechanism wherein yung ß-lactam antibiotics, ß-lactamase bacteria will going to break the ß-lactam ring, which disable the structure of the penicillin, which will be converted to penicilloic acid, which is considered to be unstable or inactive already. So bacteria with this enzyme can resist the effects of penicillin and other beta antibiotics. So when there is a breakage, parang yung penicillinic acid is parang inactivate na ng mga ß-lactamase bacteria yung ß-lactam ring, because yung ß-lactam ring, okay, ito yung tawag nito po, ito yung responsible for the mechanism or pharmacologic actions of the antibiotic. So ß-lactamase producing bacteria, so example yan mga Staph aureus, Haemophilus influenzae, Escherichia coli, the Pseudomonas aeruginosa or Enterobacter species produce also ampicillin C ß-lactamase and extended broad lactamases, which or ESBLS, which will hydrolyze the compound cephalosporins and penicillin. So this is one resistance of the Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Okay, we have again another one is impaired penetration of ß-lactam antibiotics due to impermeability of the membrane of gram-negative bacteria, which has outer membrane called purine. So this one is the defense mechanism. So impermeable siya. So there's a difficulty of the ß-lactam antibiotics to penetrate the cell membrane, the gram-negative bacteria. That is why that is one of the resistance or mechanism of resistance of the bacterial cells, especially the gram-negative. And gram-negative may produce efflux pump protein to inhibit the ß-lactam antibiotics. So as what I have discussed, okay, yung efflux system class, that is a protein, so we're going to pump out the antibiotics out of the bacterial cells. So pag ganun po, may chance talagang there is a 100% okay resistance because of the pumping of the antibiotics. So yung pump down efflux system is also facilitated by the protein that is found in the bacterial cell membrane. So this one is our illustrations or diagram. So we have the efflux pump, So if this is antibiotic, so pwede siyang efflux, and we have decreased uptake due to impermeability of the cell membrane. And then we have the target alterations. So pwede magkaroon ng tawag natin na changes in the target, kung mRNA ba or dito ba sa DNA. So pwede magkaroon ng changes, or instead na DNA dito siya. So there is what we call changes. So pwedeng hindi na makaban yung antibiotic po dito sa mga proteins that is found inside the cytoplasm. So once this one is mRNA and DNA is found in nucleus, so once na there is what we call a target alterations, then this antibiotic cannot able to inhibit the protein synthesis also, kasi it is involved already the messenger RNA and the DNA. And then so sa process na ganun tas, di ba magkaroon tayo ng transcription process or translation process, so hindi na ma-inhibit ng mga antibacterial cells because of the alterations of target, which is also the mechanism of resistance also of a certain bacteria, especially the gram-negative, okay, or alternative enzymes. So there is what we call a resistance wherein enzymes or prevention of the bacterial enzymes, prevention niya para or what we call this one, prevention of the hydrolysis, okay, or hydrolysis process. Pwede yung hydrolysis, not prevention, hydrolysis, wherein enzymes can able bacterial enzymes, I mean, no, to clarify, bacterial enzymes can able to hydrolyze the antibiotics or inactivating the enzymes, okay. So inactivating enzymes, so pwedeng magkaroon natin na hindi pwedeng hindi na basta-basta makapenetrate yung drug compound in the target cells, okay. So inactivate ng enzyme, or enzymes can able to hydrolyze the antibiotics or the structure, I mean, of the antibiotics. So resistance of mechanisms, so produce ß-lactamase. So ito yung penicillinase, destroys antibiotic or degrade antibiotic. Modified penicillin binding protein, so usually this refers to the inhibition, I mean, of the binding of antibiotic to penicillin binding proteins, okay. Kasi the importance of that penicillin binding proteins, as what we have discussed, this PBP is responsible for the cell wall synthesis, because cell wall synthesis contains the N-acetylglucosamine and N-acetylmuramic acid, I mean, okay, remember that one, the NAM and the NAG, okay. Modified porins, this one prevents the penetration, I mean, of the antibiotic before they enter, because they will cross the cell membrane. So there is what we call purines or modified purines that will able to block, I mean, the antibiotic penetration. So that is the resistance mechanism. So clinical uses of amoxicillin on oral penicillin should be given 1 to 2 hours before or after meals, okay. So why? Because kung before meal siya, mas madali yung absorption process. They should not be given with food to minimize the binding to protein. So tatagal yung penetration. So pwede siya mag-bind doon sa proteins inside our gastrointestinal tract. Acid inactivations. So once na nag-bind siya doon sa protein, so pwede siyang inactivate din doon sa gastrointestinal tract, okay. So blood levels of penicillins can be raised by simultaneous administration of probenecid, okay. So kung gusto mo i-increase probenecid, that's 10 mg per kilogram in children, so every 6 hours orally, which impairs renal tubular secretion of weak acids such as ß-lactam compounds, okay. When say renal tubular secretions, ito yung once gina-secrete siya class ng renal tubular, that is already that will follow already the excretion process. Kung mga baka absorption, so hindi pa siya secrete ng renal tubular. So where can you find the renal tubular renal tubular? So it is found in the kidney, so specifically in the nephron, ba? So there's a renal tubules that is present in nephron, because nephron is the basic structural unit of kidney, wherein it secretes drug compounds or reabsorbed drug compounds, okay. So clinical uses of penicillin G, used for endocarditis caused by Streptococcus viridans or bovis, pharyngitis by group A beta hemolytic streptococci, or cat bite cellulitis by Pasteurella multocida, and syphilis by Treponema pallidum, or commonly caused the STD or sexually transmitted. This belongs to STD or sexually transmitted diseases, okay, or disease. Penicillin units, we have originally defined units. So we have crystalline sodium. So crystalline sodium is the salt content, and then penicillin G contains 1,600 per milligram, or 1 unit is 1.6 micrograms, or 1 million units equals to 0.6 grams. So that's why I told you that penicillin G has the unit of measurement was almost 1 million units. Okay, intravenous penicillin G, first of choice for the meningitis caused by susceptible Streptococcus pneumoniae. And take note, penicillin is highly lipid soluble, so it easily penetrates the meninges, because meningitis is the inflammation or damage on the meninges of the brain. So once damaged siya, so penicillin can freely pass through that membrane barrier and then reach the target tissues, okay, especially the meningitis. Okay, Depo, formulation of benzidine penicillin G for rheumatic fever and prophylaxis. So penicillin B is orally administered phenoxymethyl congener of penicillin G, or ginatawag nato na related compounds sila, okay, or isomers sila, pwede rin. Okay, and then have an antibacterial spectrum activity that is similar to penicillin G, used to treat the streptococcal infections when oral therapy is appropriate and desirable. So anti-staphylococcal penicillinase resistant penicillin. So we have methicillin, napcillin, oxacillin, cloxacillin, and ticlofacillin. So more resistance to bacterial beta-lactamase than is penicillin G. Okay, ito yung mga penicillinase resistant penicillins. Effective against strep and penicillinase producing staphylococci. Okay, used for mostly for skin, soft tissue infections, or documented methicillin sensitive staphylococcus aureus infections. So but it has a lack activity of gram negative bacteria. So usually staphylococcus aureus is gram positive cocci, unable to pass through the gram negative bacterial because of the porins due to the size. Kasi yung porins mo, once na there is what you call a higher molecular weight, take note, yung penetrations across the cell membrane or bacterial cell membrane depends upon the size or the molecular weight of the compound. So kung the bigger the molecular weight, there is what you call a difficulty in the penetrations of the compound across the cell membrane. So anti-staphylococcal penicillins, you have napcillin IM, so intramuscular, IV. The T half-life, when I say T half-life, as a recall class, yan yung time in which the amount of a drug is already in half of its origin, or one half of its original concentration. Meaning, mga T1 half, yung amount or concentration ng drug in that specific time is already half of its original concentration or dosage. So tunga na lang, basta T half-life ang tawag doon, or T1 over 2, or T half. Okay, T half-life tawag doon, 0.8 to 1.2 hours, meaning within 1.2 hours almost half na lang yung concentration ng napcillin. Okay, primarily cleared by biliary excretion. So say biliary excretion, so via fecal excretion process. Okay, oxacillin IM IV, so the T half-life is 0.4 to 0.7 hours, eliminated by both kidney biliary excretion, so urinary and biliary. So mga makabiliary, fecal. Indications for napcillin or oxacillin includes cellulitis, empyema, endocarditis, osteomyelitis, pneumonia, and septic arthritis. Next, we have cloxacillin and dicloxacillin, so comparable alternatives for oral therapy. That's why we have a cloxacillin, mostly 500 milligram capsule. So most uncommon is cloxacillin. eliminated by both the kidney and biliary. So no dosage adjustment is required for these drugs in renal failure. So the half-life niya is 0.5 to 0.8 hours. So indications for these two drugs, staphylococcal infection like in Titigo. So aminopenicillins, extended spectrum, includes ampicillin and amoxicillin. This is very common. So effective against gram-positive, gram-negative cocci. So we have against especially Neisseria gonorrhoeae. So Neisseria gonorrhoeae is the causative agent for gonorrhea. Neisseria meningitis, that one that causes meningitis. Gram-negative rods such as E. coli, Haemophilus influenzae. But their spectrum of action is sensitive to most beta-lactamases. So, minsan sensitive siya, pwede siyang i-hydrolyze or i-degrade ng mga beta-lactamase bacteria. So, have similar pharmacokinetics, okay, with the naphthalene or in the the cloxacillin, okay. Both have oral bioavailability. Okay, mga pharmacokinetics class usually refers to the half-life, the absorption, metabolism, okay, absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion process. That is pharmacokinetics. Good oral bioavailability or bioavailable. So, concomitant ingestion of food, so take up with food, it will decrease the bioavailability. So, ampicillin but not amoxicillin. Mostly, okay, yung ampicillin, pwede siya mag-ban doon sa mga proteins. So, it is interrupted by food already. So, T half-life of ampicillin is 1.1 to 1.5 hours. So, amoxicillin is 1.4 to 2.0 hours. So, ampicillin is achieves therapeutic concentration in CSF only during inflammations. Okay? And then, effective treatment for meningitis caused by Listeria monocytogenes or monocytogenes. So, we have ampicillin is not effective treatment of UTI, take note, usually hindi very effective. Typhoid fever due to production of beta-lactamase. Basta may beta-lactamases yung gram-negative, so pwede yung degrade or break the beta-lactam ring or the structure, of the ampicillin, which will lead to inactivation of already of the ampicillin structure. So, not effective against Klebsiella species, Enterobacter, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Citrobacter species, Serratia, marcescens. So, we have indole positive proteus species, especially Proteus vulgaris. Other aerobic or aerobes that are commonly encountered to hospital-acquired infection or tawag na nosocomial. Okay. Next, amoxicillin does not reach the adequate concentration in CNS, so not appropriate for meningitis therapy. And other indications of ampicillin includes yung serious infection, enterococcal endocarditis, pneumonia caused by beta-lactamase negative Haemophilus influenzae. So, amoxicillin oral therapy, take note, appropriate for clinical, non-serious bacterial infections like otitis media or sinusitis. Yung mga light lang siya. Pero kung mga yung mga pneumonia ganun, hindi na very effective yung amoxicillin. Okay? Kasi yung amoxicillin class, this is very ito yung one of the oldest drug also, but because of the resistance, see yung mga patients rin or patient compliance is the problem wherein they cannot complete the doctor's prescription, so yun nagkakaroon ng tawag natin resistance. So amoxicillin also have used multi-drug regimens for eradication of H. pylori in duodenal and gastric ulcers. So Helicobacter pylori is the causative agent of gastric ulcers or peptic ulcer disease. Beta-lactamase inhibitors with clavulanic and ß-lactam and tazobactam class. Take note, several formulations combine with beta-lactam antibiotics with beta-lactamase inhibitors. So we have ampicillin, ß-lactam or unacin. So ito yung unacin. This is already combinations. So kasi beta-lactamase inhibitor yung ß-lactam. That is why it combines with ampicillin. So yung tawag yung ß-lactam. And ticarcillin clavulanic acid or timentin, amoxicillin clavulanic acid, augmentin is also very effective. So tandaan nyo, itong mga clavulanic acid is a beta-lactamase inhibitor drug. So they inhibit the beta-lactamase because yung beta-lactamase na producing bacteria, ito yung nag-destroy ng beta-lactam ring. So combination significantly broadens the spectrum of antibacterial activity against beta-lactamase producing organisms. Okay? So, yung lahat ng mga beta-lactamase organisms, yun ang inatawag natin na they are inhibited. Yung mga enzymes nila yung na-produce are inhibited by the combinations of these two drugs. Okay, the clavulanic acid plus ampicillin, amoxicillin ß-lactam. Okay, these drugs are clinically used in treating infections known as suspected bacterial flora. Okay, ito yung tawag na opportunistic bacteria also, such as biliary infections, diabetic foot ulcers, endomyometritis. Okay, and we have the peritonitis. So, all of the penicillin antibiotics are classified by FDA in the pregnancy that is category B. So, meaning category B, so these are drugs that are not prescribed by the doctor or mayroong natawag precautionary measures in prescription of this one because it will affect already the fetus. So, may tendency na magkaroon ng natawag na effect dito mismo sa fetus. Okay? The obstetricians class frequently prescribe yung ampicillin, penicillin G, and penicillin V because they are effective against infections most frequently encountered by caring pregnant women. So, example, may mga upper, lower urinary tract infections. So, pwede yun. Okay. So, may extra precautionary measure. Kasi alam mo, basta antibiotic nga, may tendency, it will cause the placental barrier. So, may tendency talaga maka-affect. Okay? So, it's better to have before na magkaroon ng treatments mga pregnant women. So, kailangan talaga ng diagnosis ng doctor or doctor's prescription. Okay? Kung tayo pharmacist, hindi tayo pwede recommend. Next, cephalosporin, so similar to penicillins but more stable to many bacterial beta-lactamases and therefore have a broader spectrum of activity. So E. coli, Klebsiella resistance to cephalosporins because of hydrolysis process. Meaning kung may hydrolysis process siya, okay, usually itong mga Klebsiella, they tend to hydrolyze the cephalosporins, especially the beta-lactam ring, not active against Listeria monocyte 2 genes.